Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you.
So tell me something. Are you afraid of the dark? Yes. My 3.5-year-old daughter, Felicity, sometimes in the middle of the night, 3 or 4 o'clock, she comes into our bedroom. She says, "Mommy, I'm afraid of the dark. Can I sleep with you?" She's so sweet. How could you say no? But the funny thing is that some of her favorite things to do are hiding under the covers and walking around with a blanket over her head. So is she really afraid of the dark? Or is it that she's afraid of when she's in the dark, of feeling alone, of not feeling the love and protection around her, of the unknown? I wanted her to have a positive experience of darkness, so on Friday we went out to the planetarium at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. Any of y'all been there? Yeah, it's really cool. You go in, and we went to this show that they had in there where it's a dome where like the whole thing is a screen, and it's like you're under the night sky, and they showed us where the planets were and the stars and the constellations and the moon. It was awesome, and Felicity loved it, so that was really great. It's beautiful. Do you know that this weekend Jupiter and Saturn, you can see them in the sky? You could see the rings of Saturn and the moons of Jupiter. Well, you might not be able to see them from Houston, because we have a light pollution issue. We have so much light that you can't really see all the beauty that's there in the sky. And so they were telling us that you need to go out into the country, or you look in their telescope, or there are other ways to see it. It's really beautiful to see what's actually there in the darkness at night. Glorious, but you have to be in the dark to see it. So I just want to invite you, if you're willing, to raise your left hand if you've ever experienced any darkness in your life. Hard times, darkness, all right. Raise your right hand if you've come through it. Take a look around. All right. You can see we've all had experiences of darkness. We're in a time now in our world, we're trying to understand what seems to be like an epidemic of darkness that's showing up in our world. And I have some statistics I want to share with you about it. 40 million adults suffer from anxiety. The World Health Organization estimates that more than 300 million people worldwide suffer from depression, and it is the leading cause of disability. Last year, the UK appointed a minister of loneliness. Did you know that? They discovered so much loneliness was happening in their country, and that it's debilitating to health and could eventually lead to death, not having touch with other people and connection. A recent study by Cigna Insurance of 20,000 people in the US found that nearly 50% reported feeling lonely most of the time. And curiously, the age group reporting the highest score for loneliness was between 18 and 37. I think it would be the senior group. No, it was the younger group, the ones that we think are so connected through social media, technology. They're feeling the most loneliness. We also live in a time where we're seeing the shadow side of people publicly. Politicians, public figures who are being exposed for their shadow, darkness, things that have happened that need to be healed. Americans are acting out their pain and killing innocent people. This is what happens when you have darkness within you that is not healed, not resolved. And unfortunately, we saw another incident yesterday of a shooting in Midland and Odessa, Texas. Innocent people were killed due to man's rage, and we want to hold them in prayer. So just invite us to take a moment of silence to honor all those who were affected by this tragedy yesterday right here in our state. We see peace and comfort enfolding them and healing taking place. And they are fully supported and loved. Thank you, God. So what do we do with all of this darkness? I asked our wonderful counselor, Dr. Randall Brailsford, about depression, and he said that the depression response is actually adaptive, that it summons help, that when something is going on within us, that we respond to others who are experiencing depression. We reach out, we help, and we must call upon a higher power than ourselves to bring to this darkness that we're seeing in the world, to bring healing together, and to find the treasures in the darkness. There are treasures there when we come together in unity to support each other through this. Scripture gives us this promise from Isaiah 45:3. I will give you the treasures of darkness and riches hidden in secret places, so that you may know it is I, the Lord, the God of Israel, who will call you by your name. So we can use these times of darkness to discover God. God is there. God is there. This week in metaphysics class, I was teaching on the creative process in the Bible, Genesis 1. And the first thing that was created in Genesis, God said, let there be light. Light. So if that was created, what was before light? What was before light? So the ancient people, as they shared this allegory, they're trying to understand how the world was created. They understood that God was there. Before there was light, there was God in the darkness. This is the final talk of our recovery and restoration series that we've been having in August. Reverend Michael shared about his recovery from addiction, and Reverend Karen shared about her recovery from codependency. And so I'm going to share my recovery story. I did not grow up in a home where there was a chemical addiction. I haven't had that in my life, except that I did find out that my grandfather was an alcoholic. I never met him. My recovery story is recovering from having a dysfunctional family. There is recovery from that. And the 12-step work that I connect with, that I would identify with, is called Adult Children of Alcoholics and Dysfunctional Families. It's called ACA as well. And it is a program of emotional sobriety. That's the sobriety, emotional sobriety, learning to become your own loving parent. And so in ACA, we share our experience, strength, and hope with each other. And so I'm going to share that experience, strength, and hope with you. And won't go too deeply into the details, but there's a purpose to me sharing my experience. And part of that purpose is that when I first found unity, our minister shared with us painful experiences that he had in life, struggles that he had. I never heard a minister talk about that. And even though his experiences were different than mine, I felt seen. I felt seen. I was struggling. I was coming to church when I first started coming. I was crying a lot because I was hearing the truth about myself. And so there were a lot of untruths that I was conditioned into that I got to heal and let go, and that took time. And so I want to share my experience to support you in finding your treasures in the darkness. As a child, I think that you would see me and you would think that I was perfectly happy and well adapted. I was an A student. I was in the performing arts, singing, dancing. I did extracurricular activities. I was in Girl Scouts. I seemed like a happy kid, but there was stuff going on at home that I wouldn't have told you about. I would have been too ashamed to tell you about. I went to private school, went to Catholic school, and I understood that I was told that divorce was a sin, and I didn't want people to see me as living in that kind of a home. There was a lot going on between my parents. When I was a child, they were arguing really loud. Think New York Italian, so lots of emotion. They just let it all out, and you could hear it out in the street. It was embarrassing to me. It hurt me, and so like you just felt the pain and the rage of that throughout the whole house. It was hard for me to deal with, and so when I was 10, and my family, I'm the youngest of 4 children, much younger. They called me the baby. For many, many years, like until I was in my 20s, still was called the baby. And in family systems, there are different roles. There's the lost child, there's the hero. I was the mascot, which is like the cute performing one. Makes everybody happy and brought the joy to the family. And so when I was 10, my family sat me around the table and said, you realize that Mom and Dad, this is not really working out and they need to be apart. And so we had a vacation, a condo in Florida, and they said, you get to move to Florida with Mom. And I was like, wow, I get to move to Florida. It'd be like the beach every day. It just sounded great. I was ready, excited, go to new school, and I had no idea as a 10-year-old how hard that year was going to be. For the first time in my life, to be separated from my family, to be separated from my culture in New York, to be in Florida where they were making fun of my accent. I have an accent? Yeah, they were making fun of my accent. So you say orange instead of orange, and you say Florida instead of Florida. It was hard. And I was ahead. My school in New York was ahead of the Florida school, and so I probably was kind of obnoxious because I had to know all the answers and everything. But I had a hard time adapting at that school, and so the next year I went and lived with my dad and my sister back in our home in New York. I lived there for 4 years so I could complete my schooling that I had been going to that Catholic school there. I started high school, and then I wanted to move back to Florida and live with my mom, so I lived there for 3 years of high school. And so when people ask me, where were you raised? And yes, I was raised in New York and Florida, because even when I was living in Florida, I'd spend the summer in New York and vice versa. So I had those experiences, and then I went off to I went to college, went to grad school, I launched my career, and I was out in the world. I was doing regional theater, and I was performing leading roles in musicals in different theaters all over the country, and it was great. It was great. I just loved doing it. And in 2002, I moved back home to New York to live with my dad because it allowed me to go into the city and audition for shows, and I was just ready for Broadway. And at that time, I realized that my health was a concern. I was not able to sing and dance and do what I love to do. I was experiencing a series of stress-related health conditions. And so at the end of that year, I was going to specialists, and they were trying to diagnose me. I got tired of all the tests you have to ingest fluids so they can x-ray you, and all the different tests that I was given to try to figure out what was going on. My body was letting me know something was wrong. At the same time, there was turmoil in my house because my mom, after 17 years of being separated, you can imagine all that could happen in being separated and not divorced for all those years. My mom finally filed for divorce, and I was in my dad's home, and it just got really ugly really fast. A lot of things were shared. All the family secrets that I was kind of protected from as the baby, came out. And I learned some painful things that had happened, and really more reasons why my parents separated. and it both needed to be right. And my dad contested the divorce. My dad asked me to testify against my mom in court. I said no. It was a really hard time because I thought when I was 27 that this was going to be my moment to shine. And my health was failing. My career was failing. I couldn't sing and dance. I was in such bad health, and my family seemed to be falling apart. And I recognized that I had taken on the responsibility unconsciously through trying to be perfect, to trying to succeed, to trying to be the light and the joy of healing my dysfunctional family, which was something that was never my role to do. But I had a lot of pain, and I was no longer going to be able to be the baby anymore, knowing what I knew. So I remember one night I was in my room in my family's house, sitting in a chair by myself, and I was crying and crying. There was just so much grief. I think there were emotions that I had stuffed down for years, covering it up with a lot of joy and singing and dancing and things like that, and crying and crying and crying until I had no more tears. I still wanted to cry, but the tears stopped. And I was in a dark place, and I didn't know if I even really wanted to keep going on. And so the only thing that I really knew to do in that moment of darkness was to surrender my life to God. And so I did. I was down, it was what in ACA we call bottoming out. I was at the bottom, I bottomed out. I realized that my life was not working anymore, and I needed the help of my higher power. And God gave me a vision in that moment. I'm grateful. And the vision that I saw was I saw a cross with the sun shining behind it towards me. So this wasn't a Good Friday cross with Jesus hanging on it. This was the Easter Sunday cross. I knew what that symbol meant. That symbol meant the resurrection. That symbol meant hope. That symbol meant that there was life for me after this crucifixion, that there was work for me to do. I'm really grateful for that. So that's my experience. I want to share with you my strength. I had asked Siobhan to sing that song Thursday, and it's a song that I heard in jazzercise class, of all places. I really liked it. You know, would you ever hear something like out of a spiritual context, right? And jazzercise is spiritual, I guess, in some way. And it just touched me. And here I'm working out, and it touched my heart because it reminded me of that, exactly that time when I wanted to sing and dance and be the light, and I was in so much pain, and I just needed to know that who I was enough. I didn't need to fix my family. I could just be myself. I wanted to be my authentic self. I wanted that more than anything else. I didn't want to play roles. I discovered I was a people pleaser. I discovered that I saw myself as a victim. I had low self-esteem. I judged myself really harshly. These are all traits of an adult child. If you look at ACA work, you'll see the traits of an adult child. I had those. But when I journeyed into that darkness, I found treasures in there. And I found that who I am is enough. It took time. The strength that I want to share with you today is that God did guide me. When I surrendered, I let go. That guidance was there, and I had to listen to the still small voice within me. We think that God is going to show up in a great big revelation or some grand gesture. I want to share with you how God showed up to the prophet Elijah in Scripture in 1 Kings 19. And it says, he said, "Go forth and stand upon the mount before the Lord." So Elijah was called to stand upon the mount before God. "And behold, the Lord passed by, and a great and strong wind rent the mountains and brake in pieces the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. And after the wind, an earthquake. But the Lord was not in the earthquake. And after the earthquake, a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still, small voice. Some translations say a gentle whisper. That's how I've always experienced God coming to me. God doesn't come in those big, terrible events of darkness. God comes in that voice of love that is always present beneath all that, always there in the darkness with you when we open to it. I only discovered God in that deep way going through the darkness that I was experiencing within me. The still small voice led me to a great place of healing. It led me to Unity of New York, where I found Unity principles. Thank God. They healed my life. I learned affirmative prayer. I learned how to heal my body through affirmative prayer and making changes in my life as well as I was guided. If you have not learned the power of affirmative prayer for healing your own body, I strongly recommend it. It works. It is powerful. Many of us can attest to it. And love, forgiveness, a lot of forgiveness that I learned how to do in Unity. Positive changes in my life. I learned that I'm a child of God and that God's will for me is good. I thought all these problems were happening because God was punishing me for something. I don't know, bad karma. I just thought, wow, this is just, all these things are not, and that was not it at all. I had to come to the ground of my being to realize all the good that God has for me. And through praying with others, that was transformative. If you haven't tried it, our prayer partners are here for you every Sunday, Wednesdays. Let them pray with you for your life. It will transform you. To have that community of prayer around you, that was incredibly healing, and to know that was there for me. And I've noticed that there are some people who sometimes I don't see you for a while at church, and then I find out that you're going through a hard time, maybe struggling with depression. And I just want you to know that you don't have to be in a good mood to come to church. You don't have to be joyful. We want you to come in your pain and your sorrow. This is a place that is here to lift you up. Our community is here to lift you up. We want to support you in that. I was really glad that I had a community when I was going through that who let me just cry and didn't try to fix me and help me, supported me. Another important part of my healing is that I found a psychoanalyst who was also an Episcopal priest, a woman. I didn't know women could be priests at that time in my life. She was amazing, and I went to her for years, and she really helped me through a lot of my misconceptions. She listened to my whole story. I didn't have anybody in my life who was just gonna, and know how to call it out. You know, she knew how to call it out. She listened. She really supported me. So I recommend that. We're body, mind, and spirit. I needed support. Spiritual, mental, physical. I practiced yoga. I made changes in my diet. I had to just make a whole life change. I'm grateful I had David in my life at that time. Really supported me in all that. And he knows all the details that I'm gonna withhold from this conversation. In his book, Let Your Life Speak, Parker Palmer tells a brief Hasidic tale that reveals our universal tendency to want to be someone else and the ultimate importance of being oneself. And the subject is Rabbi Zusia. So Rabbi Zusia, when he was an old man, said, "In the coming world, they will not ask me, 'Why were you not Moses?' They will ask me, 'Why were you not Zusia?'" So, why are you not David, and Mindy, Carl, and George, and Marcella? Who you truly are. That's who we really want to be, not what we think other people want us to be. That's the calling of our heart, to be our true self, our true divine self, and bring that to the world, and that will change the world. When I dedicated myself to being my true self, to being Jeanmarie, I gained clarity, I gained inner peace, I was so confused trying to please everybody. It's confusing. I try to be who everybody wants me to be because everybody's ideas of me are different because you're only seeing partial. I know the fullness of who I am, and so I know when I'm expressing that. And I'm grateful that being dedicated to being my true self led me to being able to hear my call to ministry in 2009. So I shared my experience, my strength, and I want to share my hope. My hope is that for every crucifixion in your life, there is a resurrection. It is seen in nature. It is guaranteed. You see bears hibernating in the winter. They come back to life in the spring. You see the trees lose all their leaves, and they look barren. They come back to life in the spring. We planted some of the unity seeds. Did any of you plant those seeds that we got in church a few months ago, the zinnias? We planted them at home. Gosh, it was so much fun. We never planted seeds. And just for fun to watch them grow. And you know it's been like 100 degrees every day for the longest time. And so we had to water them every day in order to keep them alive. And there was one day we forgot. And there was one that went right down to the ground. It wilted, it got brown. I thought it was a goner for sure. But we thought, all right, well, let's water it and just see anything. And it slowly came back up. The brown parts didn't change, but some new growth came, some green came. Oh, we were surprised. It started growing, and then a bloom. There's a bloom on it now, where we thought it was gone. For sure. There was resurrection. It's happening all around us. There's something new that wants to be born in you. Do you feel it? Do you feel it? There's some new life that wants to be resurrected within you. But you may have to go into the darkness within you to find it, to do some healing work, to do some forgiveness, to learn to see some things more clearly. There may be some things that are calling you and saying, I want to be seen, I want to be heard, to give it a voice in a healthy, supported way. In the darkness, you will find your true self, I guarantee you. One of the treasures of the darkness is being able to be a healing presence for others because of your journey with it. I want to share with you a poem that I wrote this week called Treasures of Darkness that speaks to this. God, I have cried. I have cried and cried and cried and cried. I have cried until my face ached and the tissues ran out. A trash can filled with fluffy white sadness. You held me in my brokenness. You assured me of my wholeness. You gifted me with a grief that allowed me to sit with one of your beloveds again and again, to behold them in their brokenness and to know there was nothing to fix, to remember their wholeness when they forgot, to be the eyes of your compassion, the heart of your love. How could I have walked with them in the darkness if I had not known you in my darkest hours? You are in the darkness and the light. You know me at depth, and I am yours. Becoming a unity minister is the greatest treasure of the darkness that I experienced. And that is why I believe that each of us have done this Recovery and Restoration series to share with you how we've walked in darkness and how we found resurrection and healing and hope and joy and purpose, and to know that that is available for each of you. So if you're walking in darkness today, please know that we have support for you. We have counselors who are on staff all week. Just call the office, make an appointment. We have a counselor here on duty today. We have our ministers here to support you. Our Unity prayer partners are here to pray with you. If you haven't prayed with them, today's the day. Come on up, share with them whatever is on your heart. It will bless you to be held in prayer. May you know God as the love that will see you through any darkness in your life. And so I want to close with a song. If you're experiencing darkness today, this song is for you.
it rains, it pours, but you didn't even notice. It ain't raining anymore. It's hard to breathe when all you know is the struggle of staying above the rising water line. Well, the sky is finally opened, the rain and wind stop blowing, but you're stuck out in the same old storm again. You hold tight to your umbrella. Well, darling, I'm just trying to tell you that there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head. If you could see what I see, you'd be blinded by the colors, yellow, red, and orange and green, and at least 2 million others. So tie up the boat, take off your coat, and take a look around. 'Cause the sky is finally open, the rain and wind stop blowing, but you're stuck out in the same old storm again. You hold tight to your umbrella, but darling, I'm just trying to tell you that there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head. Oh, tie up the boat, take off your coat, and take a look around. Everything is all right now, 'cause the sky is finally open, the rain and wind stop blowing, but you're stuck out in the same old storm again. Let go of your umbrella, 'cause darling, I'm just trying to tell you that there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head. Yeah, there's always been a rainbow hanging over your head. It'll all be all right. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.